my main weaknesses in life are fashion and books. And when you combine them, terrible things happen. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new around here and don't know who I am, my name is Madison. I'm a high school fashion design teacher, and here on YouTube I film sewing videos and tutorials to share my love and passion for fashion with you all. And I'm so excited about today's video because it combines two of my loves, books and fashion, creating fashion books, and my ever-expanding library of fashion books and resources for inspiration and educational knowledge. I'm going to tell you all about my favorite titles today, so stay tuned. So here on my channel, the main thing that you will probably know about me is that I'm a high school fashion design teacher. I love fashion, I love thrifting, and I love sewing, but I'm also completely obsessed with books. I don't know if it's my love for stories, my love for like the art of books and just like the magical power that they have to transport you places, or my love of knowledge, but books are something that I love. Really any kind of books. I honestly own over 250 books. I seriously have my own ever-expanding library, and it's really bad, and with that comes my own library of books that are specifically focused on something that I love, fashion. Whether it is books to find inspiration, books that are educational and teach you new skills and techniques for sewing, or books that are just great for learning about the history of fashion. I have curated a pretty large collection of books over the past couple of years. Really, I've been collecting fashion books since I was in high school, but the last year I kind of went overboard and got a lot, but they're books that I love because they can teach me things, they inspire me, and they show me why fashion is such an interesting thing to learn about. And so I thought I would film a video to share all of those titles with you all. Now we're going to break this up into about 3 different categories because that's kind of the different categories that these books fall into. So we're going to have a category about fashion and style inspiration, a category about historical fashion, and then a category about educational resources for those of you who want some really fantastic resources. Whether you are brand new to sewing or you've been sewing for years, these books are literally the best. I love them so much, and as a teacher, I largely rely on a lot of educational resources when I'm teaching my fashion design classes, and rely on a lot of these books within my class. And then we also have a couple of books that are kind of our knowledge-based chapter books, specifically focused on topics within the fashion industry. So I'm so excited to share those with you all, and we're gonna kick it off with probably hands down one of my favorite books of all times when it comes to fashion things. And I think it's because I have a very sentimental connection to this book. It's a book that I discovered when I was in high school. I remember going to the library all of the time and checking out books about fashion. I would check out books on all the different decades of fashion, books about fashion design, about designers, because I had this love for fashion, and when I was in high school I wanted to become a fashion designer. Obviously I didn't go down that route. I kind of went a roundabout way in regards to pursuing a career that was fashion focused. But this book, I feel like, really showed me that fashion isn't just fashion. It really is style. It's personal to you. It really grew my love of vintage style and retro inspiration, and I feel like taught me so much about fashion in general. And that book is The Fashion Files by Jane Bryant. So this book is actually written and created by the costume designer of the TV show Mad Men. Now, you all might be surprised, but I've never actually seen the TV show Mad Men. It's been on my list to watch for years. I feel like in some ways I'm not a huge fan of the plot of the show, but I've always admired the styles of the show, and specifically admired them because of this book. So this book is advice, tips, and inspiration from the costume designer of Mad Men, and I love it because she literally goes through, she talks about what fashion is, she talks about style and vintage and retro and what style is, how to find your personal style, how to add like extra little tidbits to your style. And she also shows a lot of things from the TV show that she worked on and gave a lot of tips and tricks and advice from that. She goes through different fashion decades. She talks about accessories and jewelry, how to find the right fit. And I feel like if you are looking for any book to hone your knowledge of personal style, this is the book. I am just so in love with this, and this is the book that I honestly recommend all the time when it comes to fashion things. So this is the first book I would recommend, is The Fashion Files. If you want to just have a really great resource for fashion inspiration. All right, the next two books are two books that are actually pretty new to my library, and I actually haven't even really gotten time to look through them. But I feel like books that are focused on these specific topics are great resources, at least to have a couple of in your fashion library. I actually found these randomly at Marshall's one day. I'm seriously still shocked that I found them, and the fact that I paid what I did for them is pretty surprising because these books are usually extremely pricey. And so the first book is Ralph Lauren in His Own Fashion, written by Alan Flusser. So this is basically a book all about Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren is an American icon when it comes to fashion, with just his very American and classic styles. Ralph Lauren, I feel like, is one of those designers where you can always distinguish what his style is. It's very noticeable. And so it goes through his life, his story, how he created his brand, and it obviously has a lot of pictures of his fashion throughout the years. So this is a great book simply because if you are someone who loves fashion and wants to learn more and be inspired, the best place to start is to research and learn about the designers who have made a name for themselves within the fashion industry, and see what made them great, what made them successful, what is so unique and central to their brand, and kind of develop that for yourself as a designer. So this is a great book, especially if you're interested in like Ralph Lauren and his styles, but really any book about designers is great. The next book is this giant book. It's so huge, and this book is all about Louis Vuitton, and it is by Paul Gerard Passols, and it's The Birth of Modern Luxury. Louis Vuitton is obviously one of our haute couture brands, but the history of Louis Vuitton is actually super interesting because it started off as a trunk brand. Louis Vuitton originally is known for making trunks and luggage, and then out of that was birthed this haute couture fashion house and all of the styles that we know by today. So it basically goes through the history of Louis Vuitton, how it started back in like the 1800s up until present time, and it's super thick, so you know it's full of tons of inspiration and all of really cool stuff. This book retails for like $125, and I probably only paid like $50 for it at Marshall, so I'm still super surprised by that. But this is another great book. Again, I haven't had a ton of time to look into it, but I've always been intrigued by the fact that Louis Vuitton was originally a luggage brand, and then now they're this great haute couture fashion house, which is super interesting. So those are two great books, whether it is these specific designers or books just centered on very well-known designers. I always recommend those to people who are interested in learning more about fashion. All right, the next two books are also pretty new to my library. I treated myself to them last year around my birthday, and they are exhibit guides for two fashion exhibits at the Met Museum in New York. Now, the Met Museum always usually has fashion installations throughout the year and different exhibits, but something well known for the Met is the Met Gala, and every year the Met Gala's theme is surrounded by and tied into a fashion exhibit at the Met Museum, and they always create these exhibit guides, which are essentially these really in-depth books that have pictures of all of the pieces in the exhibit and detail all the information about the designers, the history of these garments, etc. And if you know anything about the Met Gala, you know that it's always over the top and the theme is always super interesting. But the fact that it is actually tied to an exhibit at the art museum makes it all the more interesting and intriguing. So I have the exhibit guide for the Met exhibit this year, About Time, which I was really hoping to see in person, and I'm so sad that I didn't get to. But it is a super interesting exhibit. So this is the book. It's super huge, so you can only imagine seeing this exhibit. And actually, if you're interested in learning more about that exhibit, you can actually go to the channel Haute La Mode on YouTube, and Luke Mard, that's his channel. He does incredible videos all over different things in regards to fashion, whether it's looking at the history of fashion for designers or looking at different exhibits or celebrities, etc. But he did a whole breakdown of the exhibit About Time, and it's super interesting, and you see some in-depth looks at the exhibit as well. But About Time is focused on this idea of fashion and duration, this idea that styles and silhouettes throughout history continuously come back and are redesigned into new things. One of my favorite things about the exhibit is that the fact it's surrounded upon this whole color scheme of black and white, which is super interesting. And I love the fact that it goes through all of these silhouettes from older historical pieces that the styles and silhouettes have kind of been redesigned into a more modern look and take. So this is kind of what the inside of the book looks like. And it's just very crisp and clean, but it will go through styles from like the 1800s and then look at a piece that is 2020 and kind of has a lot of the same styles and silhouettes compared to that. One of the things about fashion where a lot of designers get inspiration is they get inspiration from history and they get inspiration from art. And the incredible thing about fashion is that fashion in many ways really is art, especially when we look at our haute couture pieces that are hand stitched, and each one of them is a work of art. So these exhibits are super cool. So this is the About Time exhibit book. And the Met has a lot of different exhibit books for their fashion exhibits over the years. The other one I got was from the Met Gala, where the theme was camp. That's probably one of my favorite Met Galas because the whole idea of camp and being campy is like this over-the-top, crazy, exaggerated fashion, and really there's no rules, and you kind of interpret it and break it down however you want and however you feel. And so the outfits were seriously so incredible and so inspiring. And of course there was an exhibit surrounding it. Obviously I don't live in New York, so I didn't get to go to that one, but I do have the exhibit guide. And first of all, can we just appreciate how gorgeous this book is? I mean, the pink color, the gold, and then you open it up and it's mint green inside. Like, if anything, buy this book because it's one of the most gorgeous books you will ever see. And also the pages like have gold on the inside, which is just amazing. So anyways, it's broken up into 2 sections inside the book, which is super cool. So you have one side which is camp, and it basically goes through and talks about this idea of camp and kind of the history of it. And then this side is a flip page with these golden pages and pictures of all of the pieces from the exhibit, and they're literally to die for. They are amazing, and it's just so inspiring to look through it because they're these crazy pieces and ideas. And it's so cool to see where designers even got their inspiration for these pieces. So if you are someone who likes out-of-the-box fashion, super unique, and wants some great inspiration, the Camp Met Exhibit Guide, Notes on Fashion, is pretty amazing. So those are the 2 exhibit guides that I have, and I just think that they're great resources for fashion inspiration. So definitely go do some research on the different exhibit guides from the Met because they are curated to perfection. All right, the last book in my fashion inspiration section is a book that I found at Barnes & Noble's, and it's called Masters of Fashion. Obviously the cover is just gorgeous, so buy it because of the cover. But it is the leading figures behind the dream. That is what it's called, and it is by Maria Luisa Tagarello. I'm super bad at pronouncing names, but anyways, it goes through all of like our very well-known designers throughout the years, our masters of fashion as we would call them, and it kind of breaks down the history of who they are, what they've done, and it shows pictures of some of their most well-known pieces. So we obviously have the table of contents beautifully and like a rainbow color scheme. So we have Chanel, Schiaparelli, Balenciaga, Dior, Da Vinci, Valentina, Karl Lagerfeld, etc. The list goes on, and it basically just details the history of that brand and the designers and all of the pictures from some of their well-known collections and pieces that really made a name for themselves. So again, if you are looking for inspiration in regards to fashion, one of the best things to do is to look on the designers who have made a name for themselves, to get inspiration from them, but also to learn about the history of fashion is to learn about past designers, and that's something that I've been trying to do more of. And there's actually a ton of YouTubers who specifically focus on breaking down the history of different designers, couture brands, and different collections. So I'll definitely link kind of a list of channels you should check out and videos that are really great if you want to learn more just outside of books. And the thing about all of these books is that the inside of them are literally so gorgeous, and I would totally do flip throughs in this video, but I feel like it would take a lot of time in this video. It would probably end up being like an entire hour. So if you're interested in having a peek into these books and seeing me like flip through them and show you kind of what the insides look like, drop me a comment below, and if there's enough interest, I might film a video about all of these books, but specifically focusing on a flip through of me talking about the actual contents of these books rather than just introducing them to you. So that is it for fashion inspiration. On to the history of fashion, which I geek out over all the time. All right, the first book in my fashion history resource books is a book that is very new to me, and I got it because it was recommended by Zoe Hong, and so it has to be good, right? And if you're not following Zoe Hong on YouTube, go follow her, because literally she has the most amazing and most detailed videos about fashion, the industry, the history of fashion design. Basically, you could learn everything you need to about fashion design from her videos if you didn't go to college for it, but you could still learn all the skills. So good. So anyways, I'll link her down below. So this book is basically called Fashion, the Definitive Visual Guide. This is the newer version. There's an older version that has a different cover. I love this one because I just think it's awesome and amazing. This book definitely is pretty pricey. It's about $50, but you could probably get it used or at a cheaper value, like if it's on sale. But anyways, this book is probably one of the most in-depth books I've seen about fashion, because it not only goes through all the different decades, but it actually goes through fashion of different countries and regions around the world. And that's something that's often missing in the history of fashion. Something I've been trying to learn more about is not just the history of Western fashion and European fashion, but fashion literally all around the world and all these different cultures. And so it does a great job of that. Basically, if you think back to like your time in middle school when you had those books that had kind of the timelines of different things throughout history, this is that book but in fashion form, and it's amazing. So things like this, where it has all these pictures and then it has all of your timelines in the 1830s. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. Okay, so it literally goes through every single decade, all these different places around the world. Every single chapter is broken into different time periods. You have the ancient world, medieval, romance and trade, Renaissance, splendor, Baroque and Rococo, from revolutionary to frivolity, glamour to utility. Basically, if you love fashion history, this book you're going to like freak out over. So good. So this is one of the great resources I would definitely recommend for fashion history. Now, if we want to get more specific into certain eras of time and specific garments from different times in history, these are the additional resources I would highly suggest you check out. All right, my next two resources for fashion history, really these are very educational because they're focused on pictures of historical garments and museums from different times in history, so you can actually analyze how these garments were crafted and kind of the intricacies of the style. So these are from the Victoria and Albert Museum. I have two of them, and I believe there are two more in this collection that focus on different centuries. So I have the 18th century and the 19th century. The Victoria and Albert Museum is an absolutely fantastic museum in London. I have actually been to it and it's so amazing. It's so great. It's actually a free museum to go to if you're ever in London. Certain exhibits you have to pay for, but they do have this incredible costume section that is free, and it is full of all these amazing pieces throughout history. So that is what these books are, is pictures of pieces from their collection. So you have the 19th century Fashion and Detail is what these books are called. So they're by century and then the Fashion and Detail. I purchased mine off of Amazon, which is probably the easiest place to find them, but I think you can get them from the Victoria and Albert website as well. And so it basically goes through and has pictures of garments from their collections, and then it has flat sketches of those garments so you can kind of see more of the style details. So if you really want to analyze pieces that are historically accurate from history, these books are absolutely amazing to check out. Again, these books are kind of pricey, but if you are a fashion history nerd like me, these are some of the books you're going to want to have, so that when you are sitting down to create pieces that are historically accurate, you can rely on these to make sure that everything is as accurate as possible. Then we have the 18th century, which are going to be like our 1700s, which we know are just full of this beautiful lace work and embroidery and all of these extra details. So again, there's pictures of garments from their exhibits, close-ups, and full garment pieces, and then you have all the flat sketches, which really allow you to see all of the details of these fashions. So I absolutely love these two books, 18th century and 19th century Fashion and Detail, and I believe they have a 16th century or a 20th century one. I know there's more in the collection that I've been wanting to get, so these are great books to look into. And again, if you would like to see a video of flip throughs of any of these books, drop me a comment down below because the pictures in these are utterly gorgeous. All right, continuing on with fashion history, there are 2 additional resources that I have used a lot in my creation of pieces from fashion history. I have a long list of pieces that I've been trying to create throughout the history of fashion. My goal is to have an entire ensemble and look from every major decade, so like a 1700s look, complete with undergarments and outer clothes and all that stuff. So that's on my bucket list or my life goal. But one of the books that I have found most helpful is this book called Costume by John Peacock. So this book goes through 1066 to the 1990s. So it's this huge span of time and history. And basically he goes through and has these super simple sketches of both what men would wear and what women would wear. There are details of kind of the embellishments and the accessories and the accents on these different garments. So you can see how fashion actually changed every 5 and 10 and 20 and 100 years. And you can see how it looked for different people at different like time periods and countries. So it will be by time period at the top, and kind of you have the Victorian, King George III, King Charles, and then you get into more of the 1900s and things like that, and then up into more of your 1930s and all the way into your like 1950s. So it's really great if you are someone who loves costuming. This is an incredible resource because it doesn't just show you 2 looks from that time period. It literally goes through a ton of different things. And so this is a great resource to figure out the silhouettes and the styles that were really popular during the time that you're interested in learning about. The other fashion resource that is great if you are someone who loves historical fashion, specifically costuming, and also like to sew it, are the books created by American Duchess. I believe the only sewing fashion history book they have out so far is their 18th century dressmaking. If you don't know, American Duchess is a brand that creates historical reproductions of patterns, and they also create historical reproductions of historical footwear. I have 2 of their pairs of shoes and I'm literally obsessed with them. They're so amazing, as is their book. So basically goes in detail and shows you some of the major staples in regards to 18th century dressmaking, and it also shows you how to make them, and it shows you how to make them historically by sewing them by hand. I don't have the patience to sew them by hand, but I love the details in this book. So it essentially goes through and it kind of shows you how you could draft the pattern pieces and block them out, how you would cut them, and then how you construct them by hand, step-by-step pictures. So if you're one of those people who really loves historically accurate construction of garments by hand, this is a great book to check out. So they have caps and they have skirts, they have this dress, which they also actually have the pattern for that you can actually go and buy. It's gorgeous. So all different types of dresses that were really well known, and accessories throughout the 18th century and things like that. So this is a great resource if you like costuming, if you like the 18th century, and if you like historical clothing and also historically accurate construction techniques. So that is it for fashion history. Let's move on to fashion education, which is probably my most expansive collection of books, because as a teacher, I'm constantly trying to learn more for myself, have great resources to share with my students, and as someone who didn't actually go to college and major in fashion design, I'm continuously learning new techniques and skills in every single project that I do, and so I rely on a lot of resources to teach me those things along the way. All right, the next 2 books are textbooks from when I was in college. I feel like saying that now, I feel so old, but it was literally only like 4 years ago, which honestly is forever ago. Anyways, they're textbooks from college, and I honestly don't know where I would be as a seamstress and a creator without these textbooks, because I've literally learned so much from them. So the first one is called A Guide to Fashion Sewing. It's the 5th edition by Connie Amanda Crawford. This is the textbook that I used in my very first sewing class in college. I went into college and all these classes already with a pretty good foundation of sewing, but I learned a lot of technical things in these sewing classes that I hadn't learned before. And so this is a great resource because it literally goes step by step through everything you need to know about sewing. So if you are new to sewing, I'm not going to say go read a textbook, but I would say get a fashion textbook or a sewing textbook, because it's going to be a great resource for you when you're stuck, when you want to learn something super specific. So it's broken up into a lot of different sections, talks about different body types, different stitching, darts, pleats, tucks, zippers, lining, tailoring, waistlines, every single thing you need to know about the basics of fashion and sewing and garment construction. This book's going to show you, and it's absolutely amazing. It also talks about all of the different textiles as well, which is also really important. And I also have some additional books that are great resources for textiles. I also really love the fact that this book goes through different body sizes, because that's important. It goes through how to read a pattern. It goes through how to lay out a pattern and cut your pattern pieces. So if you are a visual learner, this book is the book you need to get if you are new to sewing. Obviously, I always recommend videos, but sometimes it's great to have a book that you can just go to, look up pictures, and read descriptions. And it also goes through showing you how to do all the different types of seams. This is something that I actually have both my Fashion Design 1 students and Fashion Design 2 students do, is they learn about all the different types of seams and seam finishes, because not only do we have plain seams, which are your basic seams, but we have slotted seams, we have French seams, we have flat felled seams, we have curved seams, etc. So learning how to make all those different things and learning the technical aspects of construction helps you to be a more skilled seamstress. So A Guide to Fashion Sewing, great textbook. The next one is literally my lifeline. If you have been following with my channel for a while and watching my sewing videos, you have seen me create my own patterns in nearly all of my videos. And you've probably heard me talk about slopers and pattern blocks. You've probably seen me use my pattern slopers, which I told you all are pattern pieces, basically super basic pattern pieces. It's a bodice and a skirt and a sleeve, and from those, they're fitted to your actual measurements. You can create any other kind of pattern piece. This is the magical book that teaches you how to do this. Now, this is one of the covers. I think this one is the cover for the 5th edition. There's another cover for the textbooks that are a hardcover that's blue, and that's my other textbook that I have that's up at school with my students. This one is kind of the soft cover. And so it's called Pattern Making for Fashion Design by Helen Joseph Armstrong. Every single fashion design student that I have seen online has used this textbook. Most YouTubers and sewers whose videos I've watched on YouTube who are creating their own patterns use this textbook. This is your resource. This is what I use with my Fashion Design 2 students when I am teaching them about pattern making. And basically, if you have this and you follow the directions, you can create and draft your own patterns. It's pretty great. So it walks you through all of the fantastically lovely mathematical formulas for graphing out and gridding out your own pattern piece. So I say all the time that when you get into the more technical side of fashion and creating your own patterns, this is where you rely upon math. You think you're never going to use math again? This is where you use math. You use fractions. You graph things. You grid out letters. You connect them together to create your slopers, which are going to be your block patterns. So once you learn how to draft those and have your own sloper set, then this textbook shows you how to turn those into any kind of pattern piece and style you can imagine of and dream of. It's literally magic. So I love this so much, can't recommend it enough. It is considered a textbook, so it is more pricey. I just recently bought this one used off of Amazon. I know some people don't like this soft cover, and so I think I only paid like $30 or $40 from it. So depending on if you buy it used or brand new, you are going to pay a pricier dollar for it because it's technically a textbook. But out of all of the books I have ever tried to find and look for pattern making, nothing compares to this one. So if you, whether you're brand new to sewing or you've been sewing for a while and really want to learn about how to create your own patterns, this is what you need. Like, this will answer all of your questions for you, and I'm really hoping that throughout this year I can create some very specific videos about pattern making and how to take your block pattern and turn it into different things, because I know a lot of people always have questions about that, and that's one of my favorite parts of sewing, is learning how to adapt that pattern, because you feel so accomplished and it really allows you to literally create any kind of garment that you would like to. So these are the 2 textbooks that I highly recommend. I will link them down below, and let's move on to my additional fashion educational resources. All right, my next resource is one that I would definitely recommend, but also I'm sharing because if you are someone who likes to go out and thrift, and if you like to thrift books, or if you go to Goodwill or thrift stores and go look through their book section, sometimes you can find old sewing books from like the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. There were a lot of sewing and kind of pattern making and garment tailoring books created during that time, and I have thrifted so many, and even though there might be out of date in regards to the styles that are shown in the book, the techniques remain the same. So if you want to learn about tailoring, seams and finishes, and just all those really detailed technical things of sewing, keep an eye out for them at thrift stores. This is a book that I got. It's called Vogue Sewing. Obviously you can tell it's from like the 80s because of the cover. But even though this book is out of date, let's see, well, surprisingly, it's actually copyrighted for 2000, not the 80s. We were just going based off of that muted color scheme. So it's from the 2000s. But anyways, it's called Vogue Sewing. And so they go through your pattern profile, planning fashion approach, construction basics, construction techniques, fabric requiring special handling, very easy vogue, impeccable tailoring. So if you think about Vogue fashion, very detailed technical aspects, but this is a great resource because it's going to show you a lot of things that you might not know about and walk you through them with pictures and guides. So again, keep an eye out for books at thrift stores about sewing, even if they're old and out of date. One, they're just fun to collect, and two, you can always find a lot of really detailed inspiration or educational materials in these books. Okay, my next book is a book I think I like picked up on Amazon because I wanted a book about textiles, and I actually have another one. So this one I'm about to talk about, and then one that I'm going to talk about in a minute, are two of my favorite books in regard to textiles. So this one is called The Fashion Designer's Textile Directory. It's a pretty popular book on Amazon with people who are designers or teachers. This is the second edition. It's revised and updated. Basically goes through all the different types of textiles, talks about their fiber construction, how to take care of them, what they're used for, etc. So a huge part of being a designer, one, being a teacher, I teach about textiles so that my students know all about them. But if you want to become more skilled as a designer and as a seamstress, understanding fabric is important because all fabric works differently for different projects, and knowing the fiber construction is also important. So this book basically goes through the language of textiles and really understanding the terms, the textile directory. We talk about structure. It talks about fluidity. So those are different kinds of texture profiles. You have ornamentation, expansion, compression, charts, etc. So it basically has pictures of swatches. It talks about the facts and the figures, the strengths, the weaknesses, the fiber content, how to take care of them. And it goes through all different kinds of textiles, along with showing you pictures of those textiles on the runway or worked into designs and styles by different designers. So this is a great resource. You can probably find it used places, but I also found it on Amazon. Amazon is great for a lot of your books, but if you like to support bookstores as well, you can also find a lot of great resources there. So again, if you want to kind of see a flip through of this, drop me a comment below, and I might make a video flipping through some of these books. Okay, my next book isn't one that I've really relied on a lot. I just bought it on a whim because I thought it would be great to have in my library. So part of growing as a designer is also growing in your ability to sketch out designs and illustrate them, whether that's being able to sketch and draw croquis and illustrate your figures. I might drop some video links down below if you want to learn about that, or if you want me to film a video about it, let me know. I'm not the best artist, but I tried to get better over the years, especially because I have a whole couple of days in my classes where I show my students, and half of them are better artists than me, so I have to get better. But this is a book all about fashion sketching. It's called Fashion Design, Drawing, and Presentation. So there are a lot of books like this that I have seen. I bought this from Thrift Books. Thrift Books is my favorite place to buy books that are used for an incredibly good deal. So if you don't like buying things that are new, always check out Thrift Books. But basically they kind of show you how to draw fashion figures, and then it kind of goes through walking you through how to design and illustrate different types of garments, how to draw different kinds of feet and heads, and really illustrate what your patterns and your fashions and your fabrics are supposed to look like. So if you need a resource for fashion sketching, how to sketch different sleeves, this is a great resource, as is a lot of other sketching books, but I really like the contents of this one compared to other ones. All right, continuing on with our fashion education resources. Next up, we have another old thrifted book all about sewing techniques. This is called Tailoring by Alni Bain. Really, I bought this because it's an old tailoring book and I love old books, but also was super pretty. And one of my things is I really need to learn more about tailoring, and so this is one of those books I figured could help me. It's copyrighted from the 50s, so it's definitely one of those vintage books, so I'm all about that. But they basically go through equipment, planning, pattern selection, preparing your pattern and your muslins, fundamentals. So there's a lot of writing that happens, but there are a lot of illustrations as well to show you how you would adapt your patterns, and that goes back to those block patterns and slopers that you have, and being able to tailor it to better fit you as well. So this is a great thing. People don't really focus a lot on tailoring as much. That was something that was so unique about the 1900s, is that people, one, would get a lot of clothes custom made for them, and so garments were created specifically to their measurements, or they would buy pieces and then get them tailor made to fit them more properly. Nowadays we have fast fashion and things are mass produced, and so a lot of times we're wearing clothes that don't often fit us. So learning the art of tailoring is a really incredible skill. The other book is a book that I picked up at Barnes & Noble's, I believe, and it is called The Fashion Directory by Marnie Fogg, and basically it just goes through all of these details about fashion. I believe it specifically focuses on a lot of different designers, but it also focuses on swatches, again, more textiles, and then the history of fashion. So those are the things it goes through, is talking about the history of fashion with pictures from important things. It goes through a lot of different designers and kind of shows their evolution as a designer, some of the pieces that progressed through the years from their collections, which is super interesting. And then it will talk about, at the end, all of the different kind of textiles as well. So we got all the textiles in this. So this is a great resource to flip through, to get inspiration, to learn some more. And this one's only like $30, but again, a lot of these books you could probably find used or on sale, but I feel like most of these books are worth the information that they have to pay the amount of money for them. All right, these are my last 3 books in my fashion education book section. So I'm saving my like 2 favorite for last because the brand that they're made by is literally amazing. Okay, but this one is called What is Fashion Design? I honestly feel like I randomly found this at the thrift store one day, which is pretty awesome because this is one of those really good books. And it's also cool because the cover is like fabric. It's super awesome and just super pretty. But it's basically essential design handbook. So if you think about a fashion textbook but in a condensed form, this is it. So if you want a great resource to learn about what is fashion design, fashion story, fashion communication, big business, fashion celebrities, fashion ethics, fashion segmentation, trends, the calendar based on our seasons, sketching, careers, and then portfolios of some of the well-known designers, this is the book for you. If you're wanting to learn more about fashion design, I would really actually recommend this book because they do a great job of just giving you an overview of every little thing in fashion. And obviously all of our fashion kind of books and textbooks have some great pictures in with them, and so it goes through kind of the history of it, just kind of how fashion has changed. It talks a lot about production in the fashion, like the business of fashion, which is always great, different silhouettes. So yeah, it's a pretty awesome book that I really like. I always kind of flip through and kind of check out some different things. So this is a great book to definitely check out as well. All right, my last 2 books that are some of my favorite books for fashion education resources are 2 books from the brand called Fashionary. If you don't know what the brand is, go check them out on Instagram. Basically, their whole premise is creating resources for fashion design, and their books are so incredibly well researched. They're so amazing. Their quality of their books is like amazing. They have these awesome sketchbooks that I just love everything about them. So the first book that they came out with that got them pretty well known is called Fashionopedia. It's this cute little black book with this orange siding, and it's the Visual Dictionary of Fashion Design. Here's why I love their books. The cover is a hardcover, but it's fabric. And then this part is basically like a tag that's on your clothes, like an embroidered tag. Like the attention to detail just continuously blows me away because the book itself is like a piece of clothing. It's so good. But the Fashionopedia is exactly what it says. It is your encyclopedia for all things fashion and design. So we have apparel, we have details of apparel, we have accessories, textiles, manufacturing, body and beauty, measurements and care, other. This is like your holy grail of fashion and design. I honestly cannot recommend it enough. It is so in-depth and so detailed compared to literally everything I've seen. Obviously, you kind of have a timeline showing the history of fashion, but some of my favorite things are the silhouettes that they show throughout all the different decades. And then my all-time favorite is the apparel, where they basically go through and they have flat sketches of all of the different styles of jackets, tops, pants. Just the attention to detail continuously blows me away. Sweaters, shorts, skirts, suits, all that stuff. Then they go into the details, which is my favorite, because an important part of being a designer is understanding the details of fashion, understanding necklines, sleeves, top styles, skirt styles, pant styles, dress styles, all of those nitty-gritty details where they all have a specific name and you need to know what that style is supposed to be. So here we have necklines. Absolutely beautiful. I teach this stuff in my class, and so I'm so obsessed with this section of the book. Collars. You have your different pockets. You have your jeans and your pants details. Then it goes into handbags. You see shoes as well in here. They have ring styles, because jewelry is also part of fashion. They also talk about fibers, so they have some great things about fibers, fabric care. And then they also have a little bit about textiles as well. But they recently came out with a new book all about textiles, which I will show you in a minute. They talk about like the production of fashion, what you need in your sewing room, what you need to have a successful business. I mean, this book is like everything you need and more. And then they recently came out with this new book, which is the Textilepedia, which just like, look at that. It's absolutely gorgeous. Again, it's like fabric. This is embroidered onto the book, and then the like details for it are basically what the fabric construction details would look like on a tag of fabric. Mind blown. So this is their new book, which came out in 2020. Both of them came out in 2020, so they're super new. It's blue all the way around. Absolutely love it. So this one is the Complete Fabric Guide, and it is literally the Complete Fabric Guide. I've talked about a couple of different books that talk about fashion textiles from my library, but out of any books, this is the #1 book I would recommend, because it's broken down into so many different sections. So they talk about plant fibers and animal fibers. Understanding the science behind fibers and how we get our fabric is so important. And then they break it down by the different weave types, your knits, lace and netting, finishing, hides, etc. Everything you need to know. Also, these pages are like silver. I mean, whoever designed this, my mind is constantly blown. So they talk about the science of our fibers, which I think is so important, where we get all of our fibers from, how they're produced, how we turn that into our fabric. I always say that fashion is art, but outside of fashion being art, fashion is math, and fashion is science, fashion is business, and it literally hits on every single topic. So when we think we're never going to use these science things again, we're never going to use math again, you use it in fashion, and so you can gain a better appreciation for it. So it goes through all of the fibers, then it talks about the fiber comparisons. It talks about how you turn your fibers into yarns, all of our different yarn types, and then it goes through all of your different fabrics. And rather than just having like a scanned picture of a swatch, it has like really great pictures of swatches, so you can really analyze the details. It tells you what those fabrics are used for, the story of the fabric, the fabrication, the fiber content. It's so detailed. So when you're working on a project and you're trying to think, okay, what kind of fabric do I want to use, and you want to learn more about it, this is the book I would recommend. It's so good. Plus, these books just also make like really good coffee table books. So if you need an excuse to buy books as decor, but also books that are super educational for fashion, these are the ones that I would recommend. Is Textilepedia and Fashionopedia by Fashionary. So good. Literally go check out all of their stuff. I'll link it down below, all of my favorite things from their brand. So that wraps it up for fashion education resources. The last thing I want to talk about is 3 books that are also fashion education, but rather than being textile books or books that are visual where you kind of flip through and learn about terminology and see pictures, these books are chapter books which really delve into some nitty-gritty important details in regards to fashion in the industry. They have been on my to be read list forever. One of the downsides of being who I am and having a lot of loves and interests, loving to sew, loving to read, filming videos, etc., is that I don't always have all the time to read in the world, but these books are definitely going to be read this year and I'm so excited about them. Specifically because they focus on topics that are really important in regards to fashion. If you've been around since December when I took part in Dressember, you know how passionate I am about ethical fashion, sustainable fashion, and being a conscientious consumer. And that's what all 3 of these books are about. So we have a book called Overdressed, which is the shockingly high cost of cheap fashion. So excited to read this book. It comes highly recommended. The reviews for it are so great and it really delves into what is the fast fashion industry and what is the cost of it besides what we pay on the price tag. What else is actually being costed to this? People's lives, their safety, etc. And it's just so awesome. The next one is also by Elizabeth L. Klein, so the same author as Overdressed, but this one is called The Conscious Closet. Also, can we just appreciate how adorable this book cover is? We always say don't judge a book by its cover, but I am a sucker for really cute covers of books. So this book basically goes into the revolutionary guide to looking good while doing good. So really analyzing how you can be a conscious consumer, how you can be ethical, and how you shop and curate your closet. And I'm really excited about this one. And the last book is called Fashionopolis, The Price of Fast Fashion and the Future of Clothes by Dana Thomas. This book has been on my list forever and I have been meaning to buy it, and one of my students actually gave it to me for Christmas. So there's like a note in it and everything, and it was literally the best gift ever. I'm so excited about this book. So again, this one also delves into the fast fashion industry and also the future of clothes, really the business of fashion and how the fashion industry has changed throughout the years and how that influences our lives, the economy, society, etc. So Fashionopolis, Conscious Closet, and Overdressed are 3 great books if you want some chapter books to really delve into some important issues and topics in regards to fashion and design. Alright, that wraps up my video, which has probably drawn on for way too long, talking about all of the books and resources in my fashion library. Part of being a seamstress and a teacher is continuously learning by doing, but I also love to rely on a ton of resources where I can go learn about new technique, read about how I'm supposed to do something, learn about a fiber or a textile or a different decade of fashion and history, and I love to do that by books. I love the tactile aspect of being able to hold a book, flip through the pages, and see the pictures rather than just scroll through them on a screen. And so these are all of the books that I highly recommend that I've used for years or have already gained so much inspiration from. So I will try and link all of them down below if you want to check them out, or check out books that are similar to them. And again, like I said in my video, if you were interested in seeing the inside of these books and hearing more about what they cover and what is included in all of these titles, drop a comment down below and I will possibly film a video where I kind of actually flip through all of these and show you what's in these books before you decide to buy them. But honestly, they're all great enough that you could just like go buy them right now and you literally will not be disappointed. So thank you everyone for watching today's video. As you can tell, I not only love fashion, but I am obsessed with books, and I was so excited to share all these titles with you all, and honestly cannot recommend them enough, whether you are brand new to sewing, whether you've been sewing for years, or whether you just want to learn more about the technical aspect of sewing, fashion history, or fashion education, or just generally be inspired by designers who have made a name for themselves within the industry. So if you like what you saw today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if you aren't subscribed to my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new videos in the future. Thank you all for watching today, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.